Africa is always painted as a continent that is always in need, portrayed as poor, dependent on the West for aid and development. This perception has been established in global consciousness for decades. While the world sees Africa as struggling, the reality is that the rest of the world cannot function without the continent of Africa. Yes, Africa is not just important, but it is indispensable. If the world wake up tomorrow and all the African nations decide to disassociate itself from the rest of the world, are you aware that your smartphone, your morning coffee, your car, and even the power in your home would suddenly become a luxury you can no longer afford? Yet, despite being the lifeblood of the global industries, Africa continues to be systematically impoverished. The question is, why? For centuries, Africa has been exploited by foreign power, with the Western world profiting the most from this extraction. This exploitation continues today under the guise of international trade and foreign investment. Rather than supporting Africa's growth, the West's relationship with the continent often serves to keep it impoverished. The trade relationship between Africa and the West is deeply imbalanced. Western corporations and governments purchase Africa's raw materials at low price, then process them into finished goods, selling them back to African nations and the rest of the world at high prices. This dynamic keeps Africa from benefiting fully from its own wealth. For instance, take the cocoa industry. Africa's, especially Ivory Coast and Ghana, supply 70% of the world's cocoa beans. Yet, these nations receive only a fraction of the revenue generated by the global chocolate industry, which is largely controlled by the Western companies. African farmers who do the hardest work are left with nothing, while multinational corporations rake in billions. Western companies extract African resources with little regard for local communities or the environment. Take oil in Niger's Delta, for example. Oil companies from the West have caused massive environmental damage through repeated oil spills, destroying ecosystem, leaving the local population in poverty. Despite being one of the world's largest oil producers, Nigerians seize little of the wealth, while the Western oil companies profit handsomely. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, where the world's largest reserve of cobalt are found, the situation is equally the same. Cobalt is a critical element in the production of batteries for smartphones, electric vehicles, and renewable energy technologies. Western tech giants rely on these materials to power their devices, but the workers who mine it are often subjected to dangerous conditions and paid barely nothing to survive. Child labor is rampant, while profits flow to corporations based in the West. Many African nations are trapped in the cycle of debt to Western countries and financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and the World Bank. These debts, often negotiated under unfair terms, drain African financial resources, forcing nations to rely on further loans and aid. This creates a dependency that keeps African economy from growing independently. The Western world benefits from this arrangement by maintaining control over Africa's economic policies and access to its resources. While the West systematically keeps Africa poor, it simultaneously depends on the continent's resources to sustain its own prosperity. Africa is not just a source of wealth, it is a foundation of modern industries across the globe. Africa is a gold mine of essential minerals and metals that the world cannot live without. Tech-driven world, in particular, relies heavily on Africa's subsoil wealth. Cobalt. Democratic Republic of Congo produces over 60% of the world cobalt, an essential component in the rechargeable batteries used in smartphones, laptops, electric vehicles. Without African cobalt, the tech industry will come to a standstill, and the push for renewable energy would come to an end. Should we talk about gold and platinum? South Africa and Ghana are major global producers of gold and platinum. These materials are not just used for luxury goods, but are critical in the industries such as electronics and medical equipment. Platinum is especially crucial in catalytic converters, which reduces emission in vehicles, making African metals indispensable in the fight against climate change. Africa is rich in energy resources, including oil, natural gas, and solar potentials. Africa's vast desert, particularly Sahara, has enormous potential to solar energy production. If harnessed effectively, Africa could become a global leader in renewable energy, powering much of the world's energy need in future. The narratives of Africa as a continent in need of Western aid is a lie that distracts from the truth. The world cannot survive without Africa. From the technology in your pocket to the food on your table, Africa provides the raw materials that keep modern economy running. Yet, despite its critical conditions, Africa remains impoverished due to centuries of exploitations and unfair global practices. If the world were to lose access to African resources, entire industries would collapse, economies would falter, and daily life as we know it would change forever. It is time for the world to recognize Africa's true value, to treat the continent not as a source to be exploited, but as a partner in global development. Africa holds the key to the future, and it is high time the world starts acting like it.